Okay, so I've been behind the scenes making little changes to Kiki, and I filmed almost all of it, but these videos go all the way back to January. Since I was heavy in troubleshooting mode for the steering issues I was having with the van in the previous video, I was pretty focused on documenting and solving that, and these tiny little upgrades didn't really get any actual attention. So even throughout that video, you'll see Kiki get some different graphics and a steering wheel and a radio and a few other minor interior upgrades. So I'm going to take you through those changes today and where the van sits right now. There are a couple additional mods that are coming soon because once the GTR gets here, I don't think I'm going to have a whole lot of spare time for Kiki. So let's go back in time and show you the steering wheel. Now, if you haven't noticed by now, I try to do everything I can by myself for as little money as possible. The problem is I have way too many cars and I keep dumping money into all of them. So rather than address my disorder of not being able to leave well enough alone, I go the low buck method. And like I said all along, these vans and trucks are pretty cheap, so when I see a steering wheel for $35 and one for $235, guess which one I'm going to install into my van. You see where this is heading. Okay, we're going to do a quick install of this steering wheel and the hub into Kiki. So let's pop that steering wheel off and pop this on. I have no problem picking up a used part or some scratch and dent special if it means I can do some extra stuff on some of my other cars. So roll your eyes if you want on these cheap Amazon and Alibaba parts, but I'm in at about 45 bucks for this whole setup. And honestly, even if I tried to spend more money, I just want it to match the paint scheme of the car. 80s retro synth pop neon. You'll see. So first off, these Suzuki horn pads just pull up and off. You'll have to remove the little wire that's connecting the horn. Then we need to remove this nut. Sometimes you need a steering wheel puller to remove the wheel, but I just give it a little shimmy shake till it lets go. I check out how the actuation of the button works, and I think there may be some spacing issues. Okay, where I'm at with this is that this little lip right here is holding the horn ring. Horn ring sits like this. So you want this little post to touch the back side of this horn ring. What that's going to do is make a constant contact, but it's not closing the loop yet. It takes this little wire somehow touching the center, which happens when you have the horn put on here and you press the center. It then makes contact between here and the horn ring, closes the connection, makes the horn go off. So what I think I need to do is just take this lip off. So we're going to get the grinder out and we're just going to take that lip right off. I bought 2 of these, so I'm going to go check the other one real quick just to make sure that that one's not like better set up for this, but if not, that's how we're going to get this sucker on here. So the second one is the same, and even though this is made for Suzuki and said it would work on my car, who knows? It's obviously a knockoff of the real part, and the box said it was made in Japan, but I suspect it was not. Or who knows, maybe these are factory overruns from the same factory and then Alibaba picks them up to resell them. I don't know. But let's not forget, this was a $2 horn adapter. Well, plus $10 shipping. And it's just an aluminum part, so a quick adjustment to it and it'll be within spec. Looking back at it, I think I possibly could have removed that little gray collar on the steering shaft, but maybe that would have caused the part to go down too far. I can't remember why, but I definitely investigated that. Probably. Anyway, over to the cutoff wheel. I trimmed the end off and then I flattened it out on a belt sander. This part is hot as fuck and I cannot find my gloves, so a towel will have to do to protect my delicate fingers. Notice the absolute cleanest workbench ever. Don't worry guys, I'll be in the new dig soon. Let's try this again. Put this into there, put this on here, that's making contact, and if we do this, we get a horn. Scooch this through here. Side note here, make sure that the wheels are straight and the steering wheel is straight as you align everything. And my wheels are slightly not turned. Now's the time to check. Not after, like I did. Now there's 2 sets of hole patterns for the steering wheel, so just make sure the right ones are aligned with your steering wheel and install the screws that hold the steering wheel to the boss. Here's the link to AliExpress where I bought the actual part from. I think I used PayPal or Google Pay, so hopefully they can't steal my credit card info. All right, there we go. Here is the new steering wheel. Oops, just locked it down. All right, there's the new wheel. It's anodized or titanium kind of finish, pinks and purples and blues, and the seafoam. And then the rest of the graphics on Kiki are going to be seafoam green, so it'll make sense when it's all put together. Yeah. Now, I didn't take much video of the graphics. Basically, I bought some rolls of vivid vinyl in seafoam blue and hot pink, and I laid out some sweet stripes. I used that 3M cut tape to mark out the shape of the vinyl, and then I would just put the vinyl color on top of it, and then when you pull the cut tape, it actually cuts the vinyl in a clean straight line or a curve or whatever you're going for. So here's a really quick look at the process, but if you want me to do some more of this in another video, just let me know in the comments. I'm sure there's other YouTubers that have done a much better job on this than I have. So I'll shut up for now. Let's just watch and ASMR this shit. Now when it was all done, I finished off the big stripes with some 1/8 inch pinstripes in complementary colors. I think it came out pretty rad. And you've already seen the custom Suzuki Joy Pop TurboGrafx. I did that one right after I bought the car, my wife's Cricket. That's basically how I decided on this 80s retro synth pop style for this thing. Now onto the radio. We're actually going to be putting a Kenwood mobile media unit in. This doesn't have a CD player, it only plays media off your phone. I bought this unit used off eBay for like 50 or 80 bucks or something like that, really cheap. But it's a really good model and it should work really well. We're going to be replacing the single DIN with a double DIN, so it'll be double the height. It'll get rid of this ashtray, which doesn't actually stay shut anyway. I also picked up a set of 4-inch speakers to go into the doors here that are also Kenwood. And over here in the back, these are locations for 2 more 4.5s. I actually purchased 5, so we'll make that a little bit bigger. These currently don't have speakers in them or anything else, but what we're going to be doing is mounting a sub in place of this pocket here. We'll keep one of the pockets. We'll make the other one a subwoofer. Now the amp is probably going to mount back here as well. I only needed an amp for the subwoofer. Okay, first off, let's look at what the radio has for outputs. So there is a Sirius input, I will not be using that, and a subwoofer output, so I will be using this one. This is just an RCA line level, which means that it's not carrying any power to the subwoofer, so you can't run an RCA from this to your sub and expect it to do anything other than sound like crap. There is one USB, which will power a phone and also connect to, I believe, Android Auto. There's an antenna slot. I never ever listen to radio, so I don't even really care about that. So left and right front, left and right rear. This is gonna be if we want it to run an amp. Again, this runs line level, which doesn't have any power to it other than like 2 volts. And that just creates a signal to send to the amp, and then the amp sends it back to your speakers. And then these last 2 ports are for a camera or a video out. So this I could hook up a backup camera to, which I'm not planning on doing. And then this would be for a video out. Last line is for an AV in and for a microphone, so we can hook up a hands-free mic. For remote control and for reverse, what that does is when it goes into reverse, when this is activated, it will turn on the camera feed onto the screen itself. And then here we have the parking switch. Now, I believe there's a trick where if you ground this parking switch out, you'll be able to watch video onto the screen without having to be in park. I'm not saying I'm gonna do that, but I will probably be doing that. Now these head units will put out about 25 watts of power by themselves to each channel. That's more than enough to power these little tiny 4-inch speakers. I don't need an amp in it. So with that being said, this is the harnesses that will click into these spots here. And with these harnesses, you'll provide power and ground to each of your left, right, and rear left and right speakers. On top of that, you'll also have the connection for the battery and the ground, and then for the ignition wire is what's going to turn the system on and not keep power to it while your car is off. And then the last few things are your power antenna, which we do not have, a remote amp, which we will have, so we're going to have to run an extra wire from the blue-white all the way back to the amp. Your pink is for an audio interface telephone mute. I'll probably just leave that off. And then your orange-white is for illumination, and then your brown is for a mute. Those would hook up to steering wheel controls typically, but since we don't have that, we won't be using those either. Inside of this little dash here, it's very simple. Now, because this car actually does have speakers, my last one just had a speaker in this unit itself, so the head unit actually had a little speaker in it, and it sounded like crap. It's great if you want to listen to Japanese AM radio, but other than that, it's not going to do much. Because this unit has some speaker lines going out to the doors, I'll be able to tap into those with our harness, and that will provide power to those speakers each side. And then I'm going to have to run new wires to the back for the right and left rear speakers and for the subwoofer and power. I've been using this portable little speaker system in the car for now, which actually works pretty good, but let's get something real installed. I don't know how easy that was supposed to come off, but that was easy. Okay, so the way this comes off is there's 2 screws here and here, and then the last one is kind of hard to see, but it's down here. You can come in underneath there. Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna have to do. So let me take this ashtray out of here. Actually, I may be able to take this out without those 3 screws. Let's see. Yeah, so it looks like 2 of those screws are actually what hold in the radio bracket. So a couple little like 6mm screws there. The other one. That looks like it will come maybe out. It's either going to come out or get stuck. Let's get this ground screw taken off. This is the ground for the existing radio. Okay, so it just has to tip down a bunch. And then we can take this harness out, and then the antenna out. And then the whole unit pops right out like that. So now that we have the unit out, we need to figure out what each one of those power leads does and which ones go to the speakers. The pretty simple easy bet is to go into the doors here and look at the speakers and see what color the wires are. I can actually probably even just pop this off and look inside there and see what colors run to each one of the doors. And we have a few options here. We can either cut this or see if we can find an adapter harness. What I'll probably do is I'll cut it. There's a lot of wire here, so I'll probably just cut it, resplice on some new wires here, rather than try to make a new harness for this. Very little chance that this original radio is ever going back into this system, so we'll pin this out and see where everything goes. I do have a wiring diagram. I should probably just look in the wiring diagram and see what everything says. One of the things I was worried about is that we wouldn't have enough space to put a CD player, which is why I just bought this media unit, which is really thin. We probably could have put a CD player in here, but that shouldn't be a problem at all. It looks like everything will mount in there really nice. And actually what I'll probably do is I'm gonna reuse these mounting brackets here on this radio to mount this in the dashboard here. And then hopefully I'll be able to modify this bezel to accommodate for the radio. So these are in the way. I'm going to bend that tab up, and then we should be able to mount this right there, which should give us almost the perfect mounting depth. That's out of the way. So these are blue and white, and these are blue and black. I guess maybe the blue and white. I'm gonna have to get my test meter and see where these are going. Let's do that. Okay, so here's how we're gonna test this. We've hooked up the multimeter, set to ohms right here. Everything's in the right place. We put the red one on the black and blue line right here. And then we're gonna go over here, and there is a black and blue, it's just looks slightly different. I'm gonna take the harness, and here's a black and blue line. It goes into the bottom right here, and all that does is tell us that we have continuity between that line and the one that's in the door. If we check any of these other ones, we get nothing. Switch to just the blue line, and we're gonna check that one again. That's this top pin. And we have continuity again. So what we know is the blue line goes to the left side. Most likely the red line's gonna go to the right, but we're gonna double check that anyway. I gotta pull that door panel off regardless. And then what it appears is that, so these would be the speaker lines going to the front. And then these three lines here, I'm not sure what this one is. So the way that we check for power ground, I'm gonna hook to this ground point right here, which was the ground that was provided onto the radio. And then with the test light, you're gonna see this light light up. You can get it into frame. So when I hook up the white wire, it lights. When I hook to the black and white wire, it does not light. But then when I turn the key, this will light up, which means that gets power when the key ignition is turned on. So that'll correspond to, I believe, our yellow on the Kenwood. So we will use the black and the white wire for the power and key. I'm gonna ground the unit off of this. And then I'm going to try to figure out what this line does, but it doesn't appear to get power at any point in time. I don't know. If I don't need it, I don't need it. We're not going to hook it up. It may be, you know what? It's probably the illumination wire. It's probably hooked up when I turn my headlights on. So let's check that. And I believe I need my key. Okay, so key is in the car. We'll check this all again. So again, when we hook up to this wire, we get power. I'll try to get this to stay. We hook to the white and black and turn the key into the on position, we get power. When we click here, we get no power, but my suspicion is when I turn my headlights on, oh, there's power. So our red and white wire here, red and yellow, whatever that is our illumination. So that'll turn the buttons on, or basically put the video system into a different mode because the headlights are on. I did this once before in the truck, but I don't know why I didn't just watch my own previous video. And then we'll wire our harness onto this, and then we should be ready to go. Okay, so 2 little spade connectors there. And then we're going to hook these up to negative and positive. The little one goes to negative, obviously, because you don't have a choice. Positive goes there, and they kind of click in place. The harness here. Okay, that's secured. And then we will take this and is the positive, so that'll go here. And that holds in relatively well. So a little change of plans. I ended up desoldering the factory connector from the Suzuki speaker and just attaching 2 female spade connectors to it. And then I just connected that to the Kenwood speaker. This way it's much cleaner and I didn't have to cut any wires in the factory door or the harness. Okay, let's route some wires. All right, I'm sorry, I thought I had all the audio issues fixed on my setup, but there's just so much wind right now, it's actually overpowering the mic on my camera, even though I had one of those big fluffy wind socks on it. I should have used my backup mic at the same time, so let me talk you through what's happening, and the other me will cut in from time to time when the audio doesn't suck. I run some metal fish tape through the back seat area under the carpet and into the front footwell on the passenger side. I'd rather run these wires on this side of the car since on the driver's side they'll be more likely to get damaged. So basically I need to route the subwoofer's RCA wire, the amp's power on wire, an RCA for the backup camera if I ever decide to add it in the future, and 2 normal speaker wires to the back of the van. I'm going to make a loop and then use electrical tape to tape it all together. And then I'm going to push that through the front of the dash where we remove the factory radio. I'm going to feed these to the dashboard here. This panel, the wires can kind of go through and around that. The loop I made will get attached to the fish tape and then pulled slowly while grouping and managing all the wires together. This way they're not all tangled up. If I do it this way, I can tie the opposite side of all those wires to the steering wheel, and then I'll have a little extra wire up front. This way I'll know exactly how much wire will be needed to route it to the back of the car. Now I don't tape all these wires together because if for some reason I need to remove or replace one wire, I won't have to pull them all back out to cut the tape. I usually have little wire management tie downs, but I can't find them right now. Everything here will get tucked behind this little cowl. Is done right there. We will pull on these one at a time. That should start to flatten out. Now that I have all the wires pulled and laid into the cargo area, I have to be careful of where the seat bumper is. This mark right here is where it touches down, so I want to make sure that the wires are clear of that. Here's where I run the speaker wire that goes to the driver's side rear speaker. Now I've opened up the battery box so I can decide on how I'm going to route the power wire to the amp. I suppose in retrospect it would have been easier to run the amp to the driver's side, but I didn't, so there you go. So here I poke a 14 gauge amp power wire through the battery grommet and into the little computer area. Then I just have to route it back to the area where the amp and the sub will actually live. For now I'm just going to wrap up the 2 RCAs and the blue signal wire for the amp, and I'm going to deal with those when I make a sub. I know 14 gauge is a small wire for that amp, but it's a small amp, and I really just need something to add a little bit of bass. If it's not enough, I can always upgrade the wire and the amp, but remember, we're doing a budget build here on this little guy. Okay, so I'm going to go over this very quick. Pretty much every aftermarket radio uses the same setup for stereos. This is the direct connection speaker harness, so each one of these colors are pretty universal in what they do. This is our rear right, this is our rear left, this is our front left, and this is our front right. That's going to click into the radio here. It's only going to go into one spot, and that's it. So we're going to hook up the whites, in this case, are going to go to our blue harness wires. Grays are going to go to our red harness wires. Let's go find the other harness. Black is going to go to the ground. Yellow is going to go to battery, so that's going to be the constant on. Red is going to go to keyed on. Orange is going to go to our illumination. Blue white is for the remote amp, so we will be using this. We're going to tie this to our blue wire. So these are the ones that are going to not be used, which is pink, blue, and brown. That should be it. We're going to plug the subwoofer into the subwoofer, and then we're going to ground our parking switch to a ground, which will allow us to play video on this without any interruption. And that's pretty much it. We're going to start with getting the speakers wired to the harness. and we're going to start putting connectors on the end of this, and then get it wired into the car. So whenever I wire something like this, in order to not mess up the positives and negatives, I wire all of the negative wires on the harness side with a male connector, and all the positive wires with a female connector for each set of colors. This way it's impossible to hook it up with the polarity reversed, which will result in bad sound quality even though it will technically work. The other benefit of doing it this way is if a positive becomes dislodged, it can't ground itself on anything behind the dash, since all my female connectors have a plastic coating on the outside. Now some connectors are reversed, so whichever way I'll always put the connector with the coating on the power source. Now on the other harness it's different. The power is coming from the car side, so that's where I want the female connectors to be with the coating. The harness is going to have the male connector. This way if it dislodges, it'll just shut power to the radio and again can't ground anything inside the dash. Okay, all this is going to be really boring, so I'm just going to kill the camera. I'll be back once all the connectors are in place. So that's everything all put together. Everything should be snug, nothing's popping out, nothing's falling apart. I get these wires tucked up and put back in, and then I have to make a ground pigtail to go to both the parking switch and to this negative here. Get that wired up, and then we should be able to put the radio in and see what happens. Okay, so that's installed now. I put all the screws in. Let's see if it turns on now or blows up. Looks like a display. Let's give the clock a time and make sure it's getting power and maintaining it. All right, we have a clock there. Let's connect to the Bluetooth. Let's see if I can see it on my phone. So right now I'm only going to get audio out of one of these speakers because the other three aren't installed yet. Alright, so we have audio. Let's get this speaker swapped, put the speakers in the back, and subwoofer next. So the last thing in installing this radio was to take this bezel that's on the radio and actually just trim out the little pocket where it had the little storage tray that came out, and we just did that with the Dremel tool, just kind of burred it out real quick. Normally this radio would have a bezel that comes with it to hide any imperfections with the installation. Because this was a used unit, it actually did not come with that. But in all honesty, the only reason you can even see it right now, these little silver spots here, is just because I have a flash on my phone showing this. But in the normal daylight, you can't even notice the little silver in there, and if I was worried about it, I could just paint that black and probably wouldn't see it. I could always put a little trim piece there to finish it out, but again, I'm not overly concerned with it. I'm going to surface mount these speakers. I would prefer them to be hidden behind the panel, but the ones that I bought are just too big for that. So I'm just going to cut these little grills out so I can mount a larger speaker in the opening. That sucks. A body saw is going to work better than the Dremel in this case. And then I go ahead and make holes for the speaker grill. Retextured this and painted it black. Here is the driver's side installed, and then we're going to do the passenger. I'm going to be building a sub box here, but for now we're just going to get the panel put in like this. Okay, for right now I've tucked the amp wires right there. Negative to negative, positive to positive. Okay, there is the second speaker installed. Now we'll go ahead and build a new panel right here, and that will accommodate the sub, and we'll get that designed and made shortly. But for right now, this will do. Now this is one of my favorite additions to Kiki, the carpet in the cargo area. So I found out you can make custom carpets, and I was mildly obsessed with creating one. And for some reason I've been stuck in the 80s, so I just designed this graphic for my tattoo business card, and I decided to create a one-off carpet for the Keekster. So I took some measurements and I sent off the files. Now I knew the carpet was going to be a little longer than what I needed, so I designed it so that no matter what, the rear seats would actually show most or all of the design. The upper part of the Retro City is covered when the seats are up, but fully revealed once they're down. I cut the extra part of the carpet off the top, and I made these little back of the seat covers. Then my wife used her serger to clean up the edges of those, and I sewed on a couple of Velcro holds to the back of them to attach them to the stock carpet on the back of the seats. So keeping in theme, I've always loved the roof racks on these vans, so let's get that going. Now I picked up these rails off eBay from Japan. They weren't cheap, they were about $200, but it didn't even come with a basket. But I kind of had to use these versus generic ones because this model of the Suzuki has a very high roof and it would have interfered with most rails. It's about a 7 or 8 inch rise. I'm sure there's some other option, but I'm just going to consider this a splurge to know that it would work for sure.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I couldn't read it, but you know, this is actually pretty easy to assemble. It's like IKEA style, just follow the pictures. My boy Jake came out to help me lock it down, and that part's done. Now I did go low buck on the roof rack itself. This unit I ordered from Amazon is kind of cheap, and kind of a piece of shit. But to fix that I did 2 important things. First, I sprayed it with 2K bed liner from Raptor. Then I sealed up all the little openings and joints with silicone caulk. Why? Well, because this is a pretty cheaply made rack. And most likely the paint will start chipping off and it'll start rusting and then onto my van. So it's better to seal it up now and try to hold that off for as long as possible. And I also added some matching graphics to it in the vinyl. And there you go. So like I said, I will be making a custom fiberglass subwoofer for this car. I just haven't gotten around to it. But then again, that has been on the table for the K-Truck for about 2 years and I haven't finished that one yet either. So we'll see when I actually get around to it. It's going to involve some fiberglass work and I just haven't felt like fighting the heat to mess with it. The other thing that I'm going to do to Kiki before the GTR gets here is something that's seldom done with these. I'm going to be installing round headlights on it. Mostly as a big FU to everyone said that you can't do it. Well, I'm going to do it. Well, I'm going to do it sort of. I was waiting for some parts, but they're here now, so I'm going to get working on it in the next couple weeks. My GTR is scheduled to get here on October 3rd, so I have from now till then to get all this other stuff done. But I think this headlight mod is going to be pretty cool, and I'm going to show you what I came up with. Thanks again to everybody who's liked and followed and subscribed to the channel over the last few years. I actually have some shirts to give away from Be Forward, and if you're interested in one, be sure to subscribe. I'm going to tell you how to get one in the next couple weeks. Okay, well that's it for now. If you didn't hear about why I'm getting a GTR, go ahead and click the video here. It's a little long, but it's hilarious and kind of worth it. Thanks again. See you next time.